Good evening. Would you join me in a prayer and call to worship? The hosannas have died away. The meal has been shared. Now today there is only this, each of us, all of us, sitting in the darkness.
With hymns of lament in the air, the mumblings of our own feeble confession, on this Friday, which we tremble to call good.
What is good about Good Friday? What is good about the innocent one nailed to a cross? What is good about the darkness of war that persists today? What is good about our devastation of the planet? About people living in pottery, about the poverty, about the fog of addiction and despair, hunger, apathy.
There is nothing good desirable to these things, yet you, O Lord, are good.
When suffering reigns, yours is the first heart to break. When despair looks about, we remember that you were there, first peering into the abyss and crying out incredibly, Father, forgive them.
We remember that in your last moments, you cared for your mother and your beloved disciple, binding them to one another as a new family.
When we feel overcome by guilt, we remember that you spoke grace to a thief. Today, you will be with me in paradise.
Your love for us is just that boundless, ever-present and good. Thank you.
What else can we say here in the growing darkness but thank you? May we find our way to living your love. Amen.
They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes were assembled. Peter had followed him at the distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with the guards, warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. Many gave false testimony against him, and their testimony did not agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands.' But even on this point, their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, 'Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?' But he was silent and did not answer. Again the high priest asked him, 'Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?' Jesus said, 'I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your decision?" All of them condemned him as deserving death.
Peter was below in the courtyard. One of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You also were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I do not know or understand what you are talking about." And he went out into the forecourt. Then the rooster crowed, and the servant girl, on seeing him, began again to say to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again he denied it. Then after a little while, the bystanders again said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." But he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know this man you're talking about." At that moment, the rooster crowed for the second time. Then Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept.
Peter is one of those people who will forever be remembered for his great failure. Perhaps an icon of what not to do. Yet we might consider that he was not heartless, but perhaps deeply hurting. He was not gutless, but grieving. It must have been overwhelming to process the depth of sorrow that was growing in his spirit. Is it possible that he could not comprehend or handle the truth of what was happening? Tonight, we might serve him and ourselves best to simply grieve with him, to not explain him away as a sinner who lost his way, because maybe we can relate to his feelings that night of anger and denial, because we too have been at death vigils, or we have sat numb at funerals, still trying to figure out if the moment is actually real. So it's okay for us to grieve with Peter tonight rather than to judge him. We know that Sunday is coming, but he did not. We know that Jesus calls him back and gives him the opportunity he needs to tell Jesus he loves him. But Peter doesn't know that yet. And so, because we are there and we have been there, tonight we grieve with Peter.
As soon as it was morning, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priest accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival, he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone for whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who had committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Then he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priest had handed him over. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again. "Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Our song and theme continues to ask, were you there? Factually, the answer is no. We live in the 21st century, not the first century. But looking deeper and honestly, we are all betrayers and deniers. And far too often we are sunshine followers who tend to flee when conflict comes. Even if we might not shout, "Crucify," have we not been silent bystanders when we might have spoken? Might we have stood up for someone? Might we have offered a better word? Might we have changed the conversation so one person, group, or race is not the center of ridicule? You know, crosses abound, not just crosses of religious hate, but the crosses of nationalism, white supremacy, racism, and violence. And as followers of Jesus, the one who pointed us to love of others because of God's great love. Because of him, we must guard against joining the voices of the crowds, either literally or in silence, because silence can speak nearly as loud.
As they led him away, they seized a man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country, and they laid crosses on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A great number of the people followed him, and among them were women who were wailing for him. 2 others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. There was also an inscription over him, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And he replied, "Truly, I tell you, today you will be made with me in paradise."
Today, you will be with me. In moments as horrific as they could possibly be, they were also marked by the real compassion of Jesus. The real compassion that we hear about in all 4 gospel accounts. In this account, Jesus hears and responds to the frightened plea of one hanging next to him. In John's gospel, Jesus looks down from his own agony and sees his mother. He sees her grief and suffering, and he commends her into the disciple John's care. Both of these examples and reminders that Jesus suffers with us, because Jesus knows suffering. And Jesus is with those who are suffering, even the thief next to him. Yes, we are with Jesus on the cross. Yes, we are there. And so too, Jesus is with us in our suffering. And in the suffering, tortured Christ, we can find hope to endure, we can find love for others, and we can find strength to join God's work in the world for love, justice, peace. We are with God, and God is with us. Just read.
From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last.
Truly, the most haunting words spoken by Jesus. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Moments of suffering, deep dread, darkness, loneliness, feelings of abandonment, the human aspect of Jesus fully in view. Have we not all at times felt that God was not hearing us? Have we not all had times when we felt so very alone? When perhaps what seems to be the worst is happening? Here Jesus is actually praying and quoting an ancient text from Psalm 22, words he would have learned as a child and knew well. This psalm, which begins with these words and feelings of abandonment, does end on a positive note, proclaiming that future generations will serve the Lord, and proclaims the good and righteous words of God. Yet it begins with a sense of abandonment. So may this serve as a word of hope to us also, that even in times of grief and despair, in the times of uncertainty that we all know so well, in the moments when we cry out to God, may we also remember that there is more to the story. There is more than this present moment, whatever it may be. We are assured that God will deliver Jesus from his suffering. And there is always more for us. Delivery from our own times of suffering. That is the promise that we know of Easter, and that is our hope. That this suffering is not the last thing.
Joseph of Arimathea, who was also a disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because of his fear of the Jewish authorities, asked Pilate to let him take away the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and removed his body. Nicodemus, who had at first come to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with spices in linen cloths, according to the burial custom of the Jews. Now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a tomb in which no one had ever laid. And so, because it was the Jewish day of preparation and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
Jesus, we wait here by your tomb, carrying our own grief.
The grief of the betrayer, the grief of the denier, the grief of the crucified.
We carry the grief of the lost, the heartbroken, the grieving.
Upon you was laid the grief of us all. Your suffering is finished, yet your love never ends.
God of endings, God of darkness, God of the tomb, God of dark days and great loss.